Hi guys, this is Dan. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a slightly more controversial video because I am going to talk about my honest opinions about books. Now this could be quite broad because what I'm going to talk about is not just about books but also issues around this community. So I have simply put them into three different categories. Category is BookTube related, Bookshop related, and of course fantasy books. By the way, I'm just sharing my honest thoughts and opinions from what I have observed in this community in the last couple of years. It is not directing to anyone specific, it is just my honest opinions, okay? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to my channel Fantasy so you won't miss anything exciting from me. You can also support me by becoming my Patreon or visiting my Ko-fi. You can also follow my Instagram for more day-to-day updates. You may also share your unpopular opinions about books, about BookTube, BookTok, anything related to book down in the comment below. Just remember, be nice here. I may do like a further reaction-ish video to your comments if there's enough to do so. It would be quite interesting, isn't it? Without further ado, it is the time to share my unpopular opinions. Maybe we can begin with the BookTube-related issues. My very first unpopular opinion is, which is also an opinion that inspired me to do this video, and it also can link up to other opinions I am going to talk about later, which is why BookTuber can read so much. Now what I mean by a lot is like reading over 100 books in a year, maybe even more than that, 200, 300. I know it is so eye-catching to see in video like end of the year wrap-up, end of the year tier ranking all the books I have read in this year with like a big bold 100 in the thumbnail of the background. Maybe it is down to the genre I am reading. I read fantasy a lot and I googled it before and the average page count for like a standard fantasy book is more or less 500 pages. Some of them can be epic fantasy and I mean that page count can be crazier. It can easily be over 600 or even over 1,000 pages long. With my reading pace as well as creating videos on YouTube here, at most a month I can read 4 books, meaning that by the end of the year I can finish at least 48 books. I know it is definitely not a lot in this community, but it is what I can do within my ability. But if we are talking about reading 100 books in a year, by simple calculation, on average, 1 month you need to read 8 to 10 books, right? Weekly count, it means that you have to read at least 2 books, which I don't think I can do it. Even though if I'm going to be like a full-time booktuber, I honestly don't think I can do it. I know part of the reason is down to the genre or maybe the format you are reading. Graphic novel or manga can definitely be faster because they are usually shorter compared to like a standard fantasy book, right? Fiction could be the same, like romance, something that your brain doesn't really have to process so much information and just enjoy the story. Same goes to other genre like middle grade or YA. They are just like really fast-paced, really easy to digest in a sense. But still, I am figuring how I can balance my time with reading as a hobby, come up with video ideas on YouTube here, and of course my life outside this circle. Sometimes I do feel like I am outside of my working hours, but I am still reading, something that can be considered as part of the job description here. Or maybe if I am on holiday, of course I would still try to read, but I think the most important part of a holiday is to enjoy your time with your relatives, with your families and friends. But how can I balance the time with reading? I just like still on my way to find the answer. But after joining this community for more or less, I think not less, more than a year now, I do realize you need to read a lot to survive. If you don't read a lot, how on earth you can come up with new exciting video ideas like the good old TBR and the good old wrap-up, maybe book recommendation or tier ranking of the books you have read, maybe other longer form of content or a reading challenge. I realize if you don't read that much, how can you really come up with video ideas that your viewers, that your audience won't find repetitive? This also links up to another unpopular opinion I have. BookTubers should try to finish a series first rather than starting multiple at the same time. This is more specific to SFF, sci-fi, and fantasy because most of the books in this universe is like in a series rather than standalones. I know that producing content on here, you will try to come up with something new every time rather than reusing the same old ones. Like in a book recommendation video, you would expect your favorite booktuber would present you with like different stacks of books every time rather than using the same old ones. But maybe, like I said, I am a reader of SFF. Most of the books within this genre is in a series rather than standalones. You could still find standalones, but not really that much. I know that according to publication order, no fantasy series will be finished within the same year, right? And you do have to wait for 1 or 2 years for the sequels to come. And I do understand the temptation to start different books at the same time to try out different authors, different fantasy world. But in my humble opinion, if it is a completed fantasy series, I think it would be better for you to have a plan to finish it rather than waiting for some time to do so. Not just like, maybe I check out the first book of this series in this month and then the next year, by the end of the year, I will check out the sequels and then I will finish the series by the 3rd year. I don't really think it's a good idea. There are just so many world buildings, information, details in a fantasy world, and I think it will work better for your brain to retain all this information if you have a consistent schedule. And I think if you are doing it this way, you could give a fairer review about this series as well. But like I said, it is just so hard to achieve it in this community. Your viewers will always want something different from you every time. And imagine someone like me, every month's TBR now gonna have like a book from the Echo Saga from Philip C. Quantrill, bi-monthly Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, and the Broken Binding Fantasy subscription books. And I mean, they are not the first book of the series too. So if you're not into this fantasy series, why would you watch me? And like I said in my previous TBR or wrap-up videos, I always find it difficult to introduce a fantasy series that I am already halfway through. I can't really throw any spoilers to you, and I really need to think about it, how to promote it, how to sell those books to you. I'm doing it this way, right? Try to complete a series first before starting a new one or start multiple at the same time. So every year, in terms of new authors, new series, I don't really have much. And sometimes I do feel bad when I try to come up with some new video ideas, but I have to recycle what I've said before. Most of the time, how I come up with video ideas is like looking at my shelves, looking at my Notion, seeing all the books that I have read before, and I find out that most of them are in the same fantasy series, and how can I make a good use of them? So it is actually quite challenging to balance what I have read and what the viewers want. I just need to come up with some other exciting video ideas, like maybe the cover battle, or maybe try to introduce you to a fantasy series. Speaking of reading so much, I always have this question in mind. Why some can listen to audiobook with such a high speed? Don't get me wrong, I understand and I love audiobook. I love it when I am not in a position to read a physical book. Maybe you're on a commute, or maybe you're out for grocery, or maybe you're driving home for a long time. It would be such a good way to read a book, right? Depends on the genre you are listening to. I found that the narrator in a fantasy book is not overly slow, if you know what I mean. I tend to listen to YA series more rather than like adult epic fantasy series. So I can dial up the speed to 1.1 to at most 1.2 without losing what is going on, and I can still immerse myself into the story. When I speed it up like this, I feel like it is still like a normal conversation and how people should speak, basically. If you can't tell by my accent, I am not a native speaker, so I can't really turn the speed up to much higher without losing any information or like losing my way in the story. And I also think that if you turn the speed up to much higher, like 1.5 or even 2 times, the way the narrator speaks will get quite uncomfortable and unnatural. Imagine you turn this video up to like 2 times speed, and I would sound like a robot. And I think low-key it is like an indirect insult to the narrator because it is like they got a good voice and they try to do their best to narrate the story for you, and you have to speed it up like that. And I mean, why? How can you immerse and enjoy the story if someone is talking to you that fast? Like I said, I understand as a content creator, you do need to read a lot so you can come up with different variety of contents. People will find it refreshing with you talking about different kind of books. Number is important. But at the same time, I think that we shouldn't forget why we read and the joy it brings. Talking about audiobooks, I am not sure how many of you would think like that, but I believe audiobooks and ebooks are just as valid as physical books. Some may think that only when you are holding and reading a physical book, it is the only real way to read. But to me, every kind of format has their places. No matter you're reading on your Kindle, no matter it is like Kobo, iPad, or whatever device you are reading from, you are still reading. Essentially, you are taking the words on a page and try to like send some signals to stimulate your brain to process all the information, right? Audiobook could get slightly more controversial because you are not reading by sight, you are hearing the words. But to me, it still feels like you are injecting all this information to your brain through another senses. From a science point of view, listening to an audiobook can stimulate your brain similar to reading a physical book, engaging cognitive and emotional areas and potentially enhancing memory and imagination. So I'm not sure how many of you would still think like digital books, no, it is not reading. Audiobooks, definitely no. I'm not like that. I still think like listening to audiobook, reading a physical book, reading an ebook are all the same. But of course, you shouldn't dial up the speed of an audiobook to like a crazy speed. I don't think that is really reading. So these are basically all the unpopular opinions I have over BookTube. So now we can move on to talk about some that I have around Bookshop or maybe book companies. First point I have here, I believe some of you will share the same thoughts, is that we have too many book subscription services. I really don't know about other genre, but within sci-fi and fantasy, I can already name a lot. The good old Enigma Crate, Fairy Loot, Ghostbra, The Book Binding, Sci-Fi and Fantasy, Log Library, Our Crate, Page and Wake, tons and tons more. There are also some for specific subgenre, let's say romantasy, or maybe in your local country, they can also run their own. I think all these books from subscription do look pretty, and I think it is a good way to promote less known authors, which I guess you can say as like a win-win situation. Readers get to know more authors, stepping out their comfort zone and explore the works of other fantastic authors. And of course, you can have more beautiful books on the shelves. The authors will gain the recognition they deserve, and also maybe for the artists who gonna redesign the dust jacket or maybe the naked covers, they will also get a share of it as well. This also creates a little community for readers to share their thoughts about the upcoming titles by the spoilers provided, or maybe swapping books if possible. It is indeed a good idea, but I just find the market itself is getting oversaturated. Some of these companies may try to hold as much active subscribers as possible, so they may have a tighter skip policy, meaning that maybe in a year you can skip 4 books from a monthly book subscription. This also implies that if you have used all your skips, Either you cancel your subscription or you get the books you don't like to keep it active. But I mean, we are in a stage of too many of them and they all cost some money. I don't think I am the only one here. Ended up getting books I don't like just to keep the subscription active and don't want to wait another year to just get an invitation. Keep a subscription just in case in the future they're gonna have better titles, or maybe keep it for the early access for other special editions. And I do believe if you have one subscription, you would definitely have more than that. You won't simply just have one subscription, trust me. So why not give more freedoms to the subscribers, or try to reform the format of book subscription? If subscribers see a title from the spoiler and don't think they will enjoy it, just let them cancel it, or not cancel it, skip it. And then the leftover stock can easily go into general sale, especially for those who are not part of the subscription but interested in those books. And I believe there is definitely a demand like this out there. Book subscription is a commitment, and I think we need a change of this kind of business model. The next one I have is possibly against what everyone taught us. It is okay to judge a book by its cover. I'm not sure how many of you would do it, but I do it quite a lot of time, and I am a firm believer of a good cover is half success. Let's say if I am walking to a bookshop and I see the cover of these amazing fantasy books, and I mean we do have quite a lot of different subgenres right now. Let's say romantasy, the good old epic fantasy, cozy fantasy, fantasy horror, mystery. At least just by looking at the cover of these fantasy books, I can already tell what sort of genre it can be, what the target reader is like. I find it slightly more difficult for other genres, let's say fiction or crime. I struggle a lot with crime. Every time when I walk to the crime section of Waterstones, I see the books all got the same sort of design style. The background is usually quite dark, nearly black, and then we have the big bold words for the authors and the title of the books. Usually one of them will be in white and the other one will be in a really eye-catching color, let's say yellow or red. To be honest, I do want to try out some crime novels, but I just find they all look the same and I don't know where to start with. I understand that you want to have a consistent design style for a particular genre or maybe for an author, but I just find it so confusing to explore this genre and I have no idea where to start with. Also the same for fiction. I'm not sure have you come across these books in the last couple of months, because you can already tell there are quite a lot of cozy books. Let's say the background will be like a laundrette or maybe a cafe. Again, I know that it will be better for potential readers to play a trick in their mind. If you have picked this one up before and the other one next to it got some sort of similar covers, you would quite likely to read that one too. But also in here, you can say these books look too alike and don't know where to start with, just like the crime novels. That's why I prefer the covers of SFF more. I just find it there will be more variety and they can go for different sort of art directions. Especially for special editions, they will hire different artists to redesign the covers, which gives your eyes better enjoyment. It is also in a sense easier for me to pick up what I am going to read next, because I can tell what this book is about just by looking at the covers. The last one I have around Bookshop is actually about BookTok. I low-key think that books recommended on BookTok are overrated. I think social media is like a double-edged sword. Books heavily promoted on there can definitely gain exposure, but are they really that good? One thing I found interesting is that nowadays you can easily visit any bookshops, and there is definitely a little table or maybe a little section that is dedicated to BookTok sensation. Once again, I don't really mind it because it is like giving a chance to the general readers to express their opinions about what books are great. When the bookshops seeing these trends on social media, they can decide to display those books out. It is like after winning certain awards, let's say the Goodreads Choice Award, you can definitely see those books everywhere. But in a way, I just don't know where the standard is. It is good to give people's view credibility, but I believe majority of us on social media are just reading for fun. We are not like super critical critic. Also, most of the books promoted heavily on BookTok or maybe on other platforms are usually within the same demographic. So in a sense, these books could get quite similar. So I would say seeing trending books being displayed in a physical bookshop is good. But are they really that good? I guess the only way to find out is we have to read it ourselves. Finally, we come to the last category of these unpopular opinions. We are back to the roots of this channel. Why would do it? Fantasy books. First of all, I think this opinion can be applied not just in SFF but also in other genre. Famous authors got too much credits. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not being shady here, but I mean it is how the market works. Again, not being shady here, but within this SFF community, if Brandon Sanderson released a new book, Sarah J. Maas, Joe Abercrombie, or even George R.R. Martin finally released a book from the A Song of Ice and Fire series, everywhere will be selling it. Some publishers may even approach them to design a special edition, and you can definitely guarantee noise. And every noise, no matter good or bad, they are good for publicity. But I mean some books by these like bigger authors. I am not saying they are bad, but maybe they are not living to the expectation from the readers. I am not here to talk about Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. First book is great. Second book, getting meh. Third book, I am not looking forward to read. They could all still sell very well and get hyped. This is also in a sense quite sad for other less well-known authors. And I mean they all do pull out all they can to publish a book, but unfortunately, the competition in this market is just too keen. That's why I always think that there are so many hidden gems no matter which genres you are reading, and they all deserve some more love. The last two opinions I have here is more specific to fantasy book. The first one is about a very common trope in a classic epic fantasy series, which I am getting tired of, which is the chosen one. In any classic or even modern epic fantasy series, there's gonna be a main character who is chosen by the prophecy. They're gonna have like a bright future or maybe very important in the good old battle between the good and the evil. I think maybe because I have already completed quite a lot of popular epic fantasy series that fall into this category, I just find this trope a bit overused. I would say the reason behind is the lack of agency or the predictability. They are always promised with great future or maybe passed with great responsibility. So basically, it means that they can't die until the end of the war, and it limits the stake and their personal growth. The journey is always like someone told this character from middle of nowhere, you are the chosen one now. You have great responsibility because you have to defeat this great enemy that the world have ever seen. They might be reluctant to take this responsibility first because they don't know anything about the world. Once they realize their duties, they may try to find friends and allies, and together they would defeat this evil force together. I just find this kind of storyline is quite overused and predictable now, and it always feels like I have read this kind of plot before, if you know what I mean. My last unpopular opinion I have can only apply in a fantasy world. Magic systems aren't everything. I think to some, what makes fantasy world so interesting is the magic system. Not just the good old elemental magics that like you can summon fire, you can summon ice, but like a slightly more complicated one. It is a device great to have in a fantasy world, and especially with an intricate one. You can tell how many thoughts the author has put in it. What I mean here is that the magic system itself can't shine alone. It has to be a tool to assist the plot or the character. Imagine if the plot is shit. No matter how interesting, how fascinating your magic system is, the plot can't be saved. The balance between the magic system, the character, and the plot should be well. Like maybe in Mistborn Era 1, the magic system there is the elemency and being a Mistborn, meaning that burning different metals in your bodies can give you different abilities. This metal system is great, but what pushes it to another level is how Brandon Sanderson applied it to the plot. I still remember, even though I finished the first book, The Final Empire, maybe 5 years ago already, the scene when Kelsier taught Finn about burning the metal and they jumping around the city is just so vivid and stay in my mind. It shows you, other than like a very cool magic system, you still have to have the characters and the plot, and of course you need the writing to carry it through. So here are all my unpopular opinions about books and this community. I'm not sure how many of you will share the same thoughts, but don't forget you can also share yours down in the comment below. So if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to my channel Fantasy so you won't miss anything from me. I'll see you all real soon. Goodbye.